He is here.
Who is?
Him.
Who is him?
The sacrifice.
As it was foretold?
Indeed, my botanically induced friend, it has arrived. Step close, my friend. Put down your arms. There is no need for violence here. Do not waste another ounce of your stamina trying to rid yourself of an endlessly responding spiritual threat. This is a holy place. A place of communion. A garden where you may endlessly pick the fruits of our Lord's bountiful trees. And indulge yourself in true pleasures, not momentary acts of senseless, needless humanic violence.
We have been expecting your attendance for some time now. Yet it seems like fate has left our messages to be lost in the winds. It is truly a blessing to everyone here that our Lord has finally handed you the invitation. Come with us. Attend our ceremony.
Leave if you must. But if you value enlightenment and wish to seek a higher plane of being, instead of festering in the swamps of ignorance, it would be disrespectful of you to deny our Lord's gift. Why else would we appear to you? In here of all places? If you find our presence to be a disturbance to your unholy crusade, then you may continue your spiraling pointless journey. But if you may stop for just but a moment to experience, as I may bluntly put it, something new, then you would be wise to stay.
Excellent choice. You mere mortals worship such baffling idols. Puerile constructs of what a god looks like. But you've never seen God. You've never even heard of God until today. But now you will see the true face of God.
Now that we have the essential ingredients, the horns of the lamb beast, the heart of the icon of sin, petals from the thorn bush of Zenimax, hair scalp from the head of Laurelius Hogglefart, the power of friendship.
What?
And of course, our sacrificial lamb. Hail to the rodent. Hail to his pumpkin patch.
Hail, brother.
It is here. The final ingredient. Watch and not watch its righteous destruction.
It disappeared again, for like the third time now.
Why? What are we doing wrong? Are we even doing this right? Are we fucking up that badly? Is this dumb space marine even the sacrifice? The one foretold in the scrolls? Are we just stroking the dick of some dumb Yankee mud and acting like he's special?
Maybe we have bad vibes.
No, it's not fucking bad vibes, damn it. Something is wrong. Something is deeply, deeply wrong.
You know, brother, I brought you to the church at a young age. And you've attached yourself to our communion very quickly. But maybe now simply isn't the time. We must spread our Lord's message, of course. But maybe now is just not the time of the sacrifice. Maybe we should concern ourselves with something new.
Nah, fuck that.
This is sort of an off-the-cuff video with a loose script, so don't expect this to be super high quality, or the most in-depth, or the most comprehensive. When I make my actual Doom the Dark Ages video, it will make a lot more sense. Not super high quality or in depth, says Kurt as he proceeds to make a 40-something minute video about a game that isn't even out yet. I was not originally gonna make a video giving my thoughts before the game's release, or even making a Doom video at all, but with all the footage and info that's coming out now, and all the discussion surrounding the game, it's piqued my interest enough, and had me thinking about the series as a whole enough, that it started brewing a script in my brain. And before I knew it, I was writing every single one of my thoughts down on a document. And I knew that if I didn't say something now, it would drive me insane. If my thoughts in this video come off as negative, understand that these are just first impressions, and are subject to massive changes once I have my hand on the actual release. So if you're coming back to this video after the game is released to say something like, "Ha! You were wrong, hater. Doom the Dark Ages was super good." Wonderful. That's great to hear. I hope it's good. I hope you understand that what I'm about to say are not convictions. I want to be proven wrong about everything I say. And I want to say what I have to say now so that I can go back and compare my thoughts to the actual game's release. I have so much to say about Doom. It's a series that I plan on revisiting multiple times in the future, so I want to give my viewers my current thoughts on the series and its modern entries. Now, man to man, gamer to gamer. I fucking love the new Doom games. Two of my favorite games ever made, a stupidly addictive combat loop carried by a wonderful sense of style and direction. They're some of the most inventive titles to come out of the AAA sphere. And, compared to other reboots, I find them to be much more forward-thinking and actually interested in doing something new. So, if somebody releases a new game with the title Doom on it, you can bet your ass I'm gonna play that shit. And yeah, I'm gonna play Doom the Dark Ages. I'm looking forward to it, you know? I'm sure it'll be good, but I'm not excited. Not to imply hopping on a hype train is a good thing to do, it's not. But I'm not hyped in the way that I was unbelievably hyped for Eternal. I'm interested, I'll play the game when I get around to it. I know it's gonna be quality, but there's nothing in here that I've seen so far that's really wowed me. Nothing that made me confidently say, yeah, this was the right direction for id Software to take. We needed another Doom game. My cynicism right now is manifesting because I, like so many others, am a little puzzled about this game's existence. I don't want this video to come off as wholly negative, but I am a little worried. Not so much about the game, but more so id Software, although I do have concerns about the game. Enough concerns that I felt the need to say something and write down everything that I think, and hopefully have said concerns be written off once the game comes out, and hopefully proves me wrong. Fingers crossed. I'm just shocked that the next id Software title is another Doom game. I didn't think there would be a precedent for that. I didn't think id Software would even be able to make a new Doom in the style of the reboot. Eternal already pushing 2016's established style and gameplay to its absolute limits. And I'm sure they know this. And it, at least under my impression, was reflected in the DLC story. Story seemingly being a big emphasis in this game. When I saw the ending to the Ancient Gods Part 2, my interpretation was that the powers that be were representative of id Software. That the Doomslayer, and Doom as a series, did all that was required of it for now. And now the Doomslayer and the franchise can rest for the time being. Nah, just kidding, here's another Doom game. So, okay, unexpected, but that doesn't mean it has to be bad. From the trailers, there seems to be a lot going on in this game. And the very long development cycle this game seemed to have signals to me that there is going to be much for the player to discover and learn. It doesn't feel phoned in, not any sort of obvious cash grab. I mean, certainly marketable, certainly banking off the name Doom, but I definitely think that this is a game that will be bringing something new that will be worth players' time. Dark Ages is a continuation of the power fantasy style of 2016 and Eternal, but with more direct influence from the original games. And in some ways, may be a return to form, while of course embellishing the game with its own quirks, mechanics, and characteristics. I'm a big fan of the larger battlefields the game seems to take place in. While I love the arenas of 2016 and Eternal, my biggest criticism of them is how confined and small they often are, and they're usually at their best when they give you these massive sandboxes to play in, as that's a large characteristic of what made the classic game so fun. I know some people are concerned about the additional gameplay elements like the mech and the dragon. It looks very like Halo-ish, and at a glance seem to be more focused on spectacle rather than any real mechanic that adds to the formula. And I understand the concerns. I'm not a fan of gimmick vehicles or anything like that in games, but they seem to be the least of my concerns. And considering how focused the gameplay was in the previous two titles, I'm sure that they're in this game for good reason. Hopefully. Also, I really like the parry so far. I think it looks fucking sick. I've always wanted a parry in one of these games, just punch a fireball back at a fucking demon, and I'm so glad that they're finally doing it, as well as an expanded melee system which was pretty neglected in 2016 and Eternal. If all of these elements line up perfectly, we may have the most modern version of the classic Doom formula to date. However, actually looking at the footage, contrary to what they say, I don't think this is exactly the case. You know, on a surface level, yeah, it's more grounded, with larger hordes of enemies and circle strafing and the usual and a classic imp design that looks really weird. But mechanically, from what I've seen and what has been shown and explained, I'm not really convinced. If this game is to be a return to form, and more like the classic games, considerations need to be made in order for it to be more like the classic games. And if they are wanting to be accurate, that classic style of gameplay may run counter to what people liked about 2016 and Eternal. Because I'm about to drop a truth nuke on you guys. There is an argument to be made that because the new Doom games are more like Quake than they are Doom, that they aren't really Doom games. And that is not a statement about the game's quality. These are two of my favorite games ever made. I like them more than I like the classic Doom games. But if you actually look at the gameplay style of the new games, which are often more compared to things like Quake 2 and Painkiller, you will realize that there is a distinction that needs to be made. And there are many things that this new game could learn from the originals, if its goals are to be more like those original games. But if something strays so far from what it originally intended to be, in its mechanics, its style, the vibe, the personality, is it even part of the same franchise anymore? because in a lot of ways, 2016 and Eternal felt more like sequels to Quake 2 than the original Doom. LGR referred to it as Zeitgeist Doom, and I think that's a pretty apt way of putting it. And once you notice that distinction, it's very hard to not see the new Doom games as sort of wearing the classic Doom games as a skin suit. Something that I've seen floating around when talking about the Dark Ages is that certain people have chosen to interpret it as a reaction to Doom Eternal. It's a noticeable enough leap from where 2016 and Eternal left off, and the developers have been open about it, and that's great, you need new experiences, but a certain type of person has interpreted this as, see, its software admits that Eternal was a mistake, as a way to fulfill the strange vendetta people have against this game because they got filtered by it, or they think Eternal forces you to play a certain way because they took the in-game tutorials literally. Wait a minute, I have to dribble the ball in basketball? Why can't I just carry it and then shoot the ball? Wow, guys, I can't believe basketball forces you to play a certain way. I don't think this is a reaction to Eternal, like some people think it is. The developers seem to be pretty happy with Eternal. I don't think they're writing it off as a mistake because this game is different from it. And the game carries over so much of the ideas, style, and tone of Eternal. Not to say that there weren't legitimate critiques for Eternal that the developers listened to, because they clearly are, or that I myself don't have criticism of Eternal's direction, because I do. I just think that this game was the developers at id more wanting to play with the ideas that were more present in the original games that was kind of lost in 2016 and especially Eternal. Eternal was a very confident game that also had a hint of insecurity to it. Eternal, despite its visuals trying to look more like the original games, gameplay-wise is quite a bit of a leap. But not because it's hugely disconnected, it's a larger part of a lineage. It built off of 2016 in the same way 2016 built off of Quake, and how Quake built off the originals, and the originals built off Wolfenstein, and you get it. And I suspect that, because the developers knew it was so different, they had to directly pull and compare to the original games in surface-level ways so that it appears more like Doom, rather than having more confidence in its own ideas. But I don't go to New Doom to experience classic Doom. There's so much classic Doom already out there. I go to New Doom to play New Doom, to see how you can progress this style of gameplay. And sometimes progression means we leave behind certain traditions in order to foster the growth of new ideas and new mechanics. It's a give and take situation, of course. Sometimes I'm sad they leave certain ideas, sometimes I'm okay with them leaving certain ideas. By the end of Eternal's DLC, the game had already pushed much of its mechanics to its limits. If you want to do something new, you gotta start doing something different. And this game seems to be combining both the elements present in Eternal with that of the originals that could bridge the gap in a way that we haven't seen before. If you think of the games as a lineage on how close they are to the originals gameplay-wise, Doom Eternal is the farthest that we've seen, with Dark Ages being right about here. And they've talked about wanting this game to be another entry point to the series, and this change of pace could be refreshing. However, I do think this direction, and some of the changes they made, may have been made because of things that they were unsatisfied with in Eternal, which seems contradictory to what I just said, but I think the developers have reached a conclusion about Doom Eternal that did possibly motivate them to do a complete reassessment of the gameplay. So, hear me out. Doom Eternal's gameplay is amazing. It is a fantastic, skillfully tuned combat loop that is heavily addicting and encourages a great deal of skill and thinking. But I think there is an argument to be made that Eternal's gameplay loop is so focused and is such a massive center of attention for the game, in fact it is the center of attention of the game, that it ends up cannibalizing the other elements that we typically associate with Doom. Because here's the thing, and this is something that I believe both the fans and id Software have kind of forgotten, but the original Doom is not a through and through power fantasy. Yeah, you are the lone soldier defeating millions of demons, but this was not the same gameplay style as this. Doom is a power fantasy in the same way that the first two Evil Dead movies are power fantasies. The game weaves between moments of highly exhilarating combat encounters where you gun down hordes of demons and moments where you're just barely scraping by, creeping throughout the halls looking for some ammo or a health pack while you're on the lookout for demons who could surprise you at any moment, completely knocking you dead in an instant. The weaving between powerful highs and devastating lows was key to the experience of the original Dooms, whereas the new games are, for the most part, a constant series of highs. In fact, the shooter post-Doom 64 that is most like the original games is Doom 3. That game was shat on pretty hard because, while it's not without its faults, people took the figurative idea of the original Dooms literally. Because people look back and thought the game was just constant running and gunning and blasting while you're shaking your head to John Romero's collection of Pantera albums, not remembering the moments of tension, disempowerment, barely scraping by while you fight for your survival. And the game's soundtrack wasn't just E1M1, most of the tracks were in a constant symphony of thrash metal, most of the music was just ambient, low-key, cheeky, and groovy. And I'm okay with the new Doom games kind of falling for that idea. I like the fact that the new Doom games take the figurative elements of Doom and run with it. It's fantastic the way they've done it. But once again, this distinction between the new games and the old games does need to be made. The original Doom games were borderline survival horror. Imagine if you took an old school Resident Evil game, but you set the player's movement speed to like ×3 and added more demanding, harder, faster enemies. That's essentially what the original games are. So I understand why they went that direction with Doom 3. It is very much like the original games if you look at its gameplay. I was playing Sigil and thought, wow, this is very Doom 3. I can see why they looked at the classic level design of 1993 and made that game. And I don't know why you're making that face, Mr. Romero, he's literally you, bro. And I don't think that what's on display here in Doom the Dark Ages is a return to that classic style, other than the fact that its combat is more grounded. And the new games are all about the combat. And the combat of 2016 and Eternal is excellent, but combat in the originals was more of a byproduct of your exploration and traversal. The true enemy of the original Dooms were the maps, and you could speed through the maps without fighting a damn thing. It wasn't a test of your prowess in combat arenas, it was an enduring, campy, funny, sometimes scary, and devastating survival action game, with situations where you were either at the top of the world or barely able to control the situation at hand. My biggest hope with the new game, with its more open level design, is a return to true resource management. But I'm not sure if that's the case. The original Doom was all about resource management. That's why I say it was borderline survival horror. And you could loosely call the system an eternal resource management, but it's not the same experience as the original. It's more resource juggling than actual management. The safety net provided by the chainsaw in 2016 means that you'll never actually run out of ammo. I mean, yeah, if you have horrible aim and you spam one weapon type, you're gonna quickly run out of ammo, but any, and I mean any, semi-competent player who is efficiently cycling through their weapons, and the game makes this clear very early on, you're never gonna actually run out of ammo. The challenge of Eternal is how you use the ammunition provided to you during split-second combat decisions, what enemies to use them on and in what order. It's a great system, and I would say it actually beats 2016 when it comes to pure combat. It does, like the original Doom, puts greater emphasis on what weapons you should use and when you should use them. But the original games, unlike Eternal, gave you a ton of ammo, which wasn't super great in 2016. And it's something they addressed with Eternal, but the reason this worked in the classics is that the game didn't have any closed-off arena sections where you were forced to engage with enemies, and the game had a finite amount of ammo and resources. There was no way to get ammo back if you collected every ammo pickup or killed every zombie soldier. If you ran out of ammo, you were kind of fucked. That's why the classic games are actual resource management. It was a survival game in that sense. 2016 and Eternal are more straightforward power fantasies, where resources are always available to you as long as you are able to successfully gain them by combat, especially through these games' staple arena design. You can't have that in the classic games because if you have no resources, you will be stuck. In order to allow for that completely open-ended level design, you would have to eliminate the arena-based combat that makes Doom 2016 and Eternal what they are. So I'm wondering if this game will truly be a return to that style of gameplay. Another flaw with 2016 and Eternal's ammo system is that you don't really have to consider how you get your ammo back. Every enemy that can be chainsawed, which is most, and need I remind you, you will always have ammo available, will give you back every ammo type. There isn't a consideration on what enemy you should chainsaw to get back what resource, especially with Eternal system, chainsawing anything that isn't one of the respawning fodder demons is a waste. The original game's weapons worked on a hierarchy system, so ammo for the more powerful guns needed to be saved for the right moment. And I'd like to see this new game require you to make a decision like that. For example, fodder enemies would only drop shotgun shells and bullets, and bigger, more difficult enemies would drop rarer resources like rockets or plasma ammo, or maybe even a rare BFG drop. Hugo Martin has talked a lot about his theory of the fun zone. How people, despite playing the same game, often have polarizing experiences with a game due to the game not pushing the players into the systems correctly.
It's interesting, it happens with a lot of games where like, you and I don't seem to have the same experience with a game. You're like, what the hell? What we kind of noticed was that if you were a skilled FPS player and you picked up Doom 2016, you naturally fell into what we call at the studio like the fun zone, where you're weapon switching and moving and glory killing and managing resources. You're doing all these good things and it feels good.
Yeah.
If you're not that good at FPS, there were too many unplanned for exploits in the game. It's fun to weapon switch and use different weapons and do all these things, so good players didn't really play that way, but a lot of people did. We really went through and we tried to shore that up, to make it, to hold the player accountable, to not let them out of the fun zone. And when they don't play that way, we kill them. What we found is the more that we did that, we found that the engagement levels just shot like through the roof. We don't want to make a hard game. Like anybody can make a hard game. We want to give you something to master, because the power of fantasy that is earned is far more satisfying than the one that is just handed to you. The bet as a developer is that if I make you do this, you're going to love the game.
Yourself.
You're going to love the game.
I think Hugo's thoughts here are very interesting. Is this the right conclusion to make when it comes to game balancing? I don't know. But it is a perspective that is valuable. Was it successful? I don't entirely think so, but online discussions around Eternal show that it ended up being more polarizing than 2016. And most of the solutions to getting people into the fun zone were just tutorials. Tutorials that aren't even really good, and it makes me respect the original games just dropping you in a room and making you figure it out.
Figure it out.
I understand wanting your game to be as accessible as possible without sacrificing your core mechanics, and I'm not pretending I have the solution to this all. It's an ongoing discussion, but it's hard to make an in-depth, mechanically demanding combat system also be instantly understood and accessible to anyone. And it meant that, in Eternal's pursuit of the combat loop, and having the gameplay experience be more streamlined so all players are more on the same page, it meant that the things that hinder that, exploration, open-ended level design, and a clear hierarchy of weapons, were toned down. It's not that these traditional elements are gone, they're still there in some form. Tradition is not my main concern either. Make your game different, bring something new, go hard on them, homie. But I understand that if you like those elements that were present in the original, I understand why Doom Eternal's linear, ball-busting, combat-heavy pace and very loopy gameplay may not be suited for you. If you play Doom 2016 and compare it to Eternal, you'll find that the pacing, design, and combat encounters are more similar to that of the original games. Again, that doesn't mean it's better than Eternal, but it is more like the original games than Eternal is. And people seem to use more like the OG games as a measurement of quality, and maybe this new game could bring back some of the things that were kind of lost in both 2016 and Eternal. Levels in Eternal are startlingly linear when compared to 2016, and even more so in the DLC. Not to say that there aren't sections or even certain levels that have interconnected secret hunting. They exist and they're great when they do it, but it's very toned down and less considered than in 2016. Some of my favorite levels in 2016 are these massive interconnected arenas and play spaces where the game just goes, figure it out, have fun, and you can do the challenges in any order, and it's great. I also think that the reason that people didn't care for the platforming in Eternal wasn't because it wasn't fun. I thought it was fun. I actually like first-person platforming, but mostly because it was obvious linear downtime between the levels, rather than an extension of the secret hunting like in 2016, making the platforming sections not the most interesting to revisit for some. The second DLC does address this though, and I like how it came out. When you platformed in 2016, it was you studying the landscape, seeing what looked out of place and where it could possibly lead. The platforming Eternal, while I think it is very fun, is so gamey looking and so, frankly, idiot-proof that there's no challenge in discerning the environments in the same way 2016 and the originals did, making the platforming for secret hunting and traversal kinda easy. Secret hunting in Eternal as a whole was quite easy. While the gameplay challenges are fun, I don't think they're a great substitute for what we lost. I believe a lot of the secrets were nerfed because they wanted all players to be on the same playing field to alleviate frustrations with the combat. In 2016, you had to go out of your way to find certain weapons at optimal points in the game. Character upgrades and runes that are vital can only be found through exploration, really incentivizing that. All the vital upgrades and weapons in Eternal are basically given to you. But in 2016, like the original games, you could get certain weapons early as a reward for being a clever boy. I've been playing 2016 since that game came out, and only a couple years ago did I discover that you could get the rocket launcher early. And when I found that out, I was like, whoa, damn, that's a fucking secret. That's cool. I was rewarded. That same feeling doesn't exist in Eternal. There are elements like this in Eternal that serve a similar purpose. In the DLCs, the Slayer Gates present you with these challenges that provide you with an optional upgrade. The Unmaker is also optional, and I really enjoy the Slayer Gates. And in the second DLC, the Gore Nests have optional challenges where you can upgrade the hammer and get cosmetics. But they're all in service of, once again, the combat loop. It's a trial by combat, not resource management, open-ended exploration, and a risk or reward through your survival. Even little things that I always liked about the original games and in 2016, like Demon End fighting, were basically neutered in Eternal. Or things like your melee doing 0 damage so you can't do stuff like this, which sort of harms the character of this big guy who loves to rip and tear, but now suddenly he's doing 0 damage to these fuckers. I know why this exists. It's meant to balance out the core gameplay loop, and this does benefit the combat. It does get more players on the same page, but it also removes some of the character of the series. You can tell me it's not a big deal, and it isn't a big deal, but do you think it would have been better if the original Doom didn't have these things so that it could be more balanced? Again, understand what I'm saying. I think there comes a point where game balancing can cannibalize itself and start to remove the illustrative things that make games an interesting artistic medium. I love challenge, I love hard games, but these things aren't a prerequisite for a good game. I don't care about challenge as like a badge of honor. I only care about the game successfully illustrating what it wants you to feel. And I wonder how much of the changes made in Eternal from 2016 was kind of them learning the wrong lessons. I thought the biggest issue in 2016 was just simple game balancing, not an issue with the core fundamentals. Certain weapons like the super shotgun, the Gauss cannon, the remote detonation mod of the rocket launcher, and even the amount of chainsaw fuel you get and certain relics were clearly overtuned. But if 2016 received the same post-launch balancing that Eternal did, I wonder if we would even be having this discussion. Dark Ages seems to be simpling things down in a manner where everyone can pick it up easily, something that Doom Eternal really had a hard time explaining to the player. How do you explain high-level play to a person who is new so that they instantly understand? Well, I don't really know. I don't even know if that's possible. It's hard to explain tech in a manner that's intuitive. It's a technique for a reason. It's like if we design a new Smash game with wave dashing or a new 3D Mario with backwards long jumping in mind. It's just not gonna work, it won't fly. In fact, it might actually make the game tedious. And it's not tedious in Eternal, and this isn't me saying that this is the wrong direction for Eternal to take. It wasn't. I think it was the right direction to take. But something funny about all of this is that Hugo Martin was inspired by a speedrun of the level Cadinger's Sanctum from 2016, where the player was doing these insane movements and weapon combos, when compared to other footage where people just spammed overpowered weapons or didn't even know what they were doing. He wanted people to play more like that, only for the guy who did that speedrun to say that he hates how Eternal plays. Oops. The Dark Ages is once again another reassessment of the series, and a reintroduction of things lost. The levels are larger and more open-ended, greater emphasis on exploration and secret hunting, more grounded run-and-gun strafe-type gameplay. It looks fun. I know it will be fun. The gameplay will be great like always. But Doom is not just about the gameplay. It's about its vibe, its style. And at this stage in its life, it seems to be more about the brand. And brands suck. Brand flakes. And I think ultimately, that's why this game even exists. Hey everybody, it's Debbie. Thank you for the applause. Today I'm going to be doing some Doom impressions for the Doom community, because the Doom community probably is really mad at this video right now, so I'm going to do some cool Doom impressions to impress you all. So you better fucking like it. You better fucking like it, okay? Okay, so thank you for the applause. Okay, here's my impression of the imp from Doom. When you shoot the imp from Doom and you kill him. Okay, here's my impression of the Doom when you're running around the halls in Doom, and like you hear the monster, they go. You know how the monsters they go when you're walking around Doom, and you'll hear a little monster, a little creature, a little imp. He'll go. That's my impression. Okay, here's my impression of the Baron of Hell. Okay, here's my impression of the Cacodemon. Okay, here's my impression of the spider from Minecraft. Okay, everybody, thank you. I think the main thing that stumped most people is the idea of, was this even supposed to be a Doom game? At the end of The Ancient Gods, where the game was hinting at the idea of Lovecraftian entities and worlds far greater than heaven and hell, and Doomguy gets put back into a sarcophagus, I thought, oh, they're not setting up a new Doom game, they're setting up Quake, which is what that series is about. Only for us to now get a Doom game with a dimmer, earthier, grungier art style set in a medieval fantasy world with high-tech elements. It's easy to point fingers and say Bethesda made them do it, because Doom is a more profitable IP than Quake, and I'm not entirely ruling that out, but there's also another chance that this was just id's doing. That this game, in its very early production, was supposed to be a new Quake game. But id, not confident in their ability to handle that franchise just yet, with all the baggage it carries, and maybe weren't super satisfied with how Eternal's story went and ended, maybe they said, let's give Doom one final swing. I mean, considering that Quake is famous for its multiplayer, and the past last two Doom games have both had really mediocre multiplayer, and this game straight up does not have multiplayer, which I'm okay with. It makes me wonder if they just didn't have the confidence to tackle that yet. I really do hope we get a new deathmatch multiplayer game from id Software sometime in the future, because the only one we got right now is Quake Champions, and Quake Champions fucking sucks. If I want to play a multiplayer Quake successor with shitty live service elements, I'm playing Team Fortress 2. And the weird circumstances around this game's sudden existence, being announced a lot closer to its release date than most id games are, has me and many others putting on our tinfoil hats. And it isn't making, like, the most amazing first impression on me. I don't fall into hype, I don't like hype trains, I don't like hyping up a community, nor am I sold on hype moments and aura. And my apathy isn't really helped by how apathetic I feel some of the art direction and music seems to be so far. Because I'm gonna be honest, not a huge fan of the look. I mean, hey, that technology do be technologing. I mean, look at all those graphics. They've had all those graphics in this tiny ass disc? Shit's fucking magic, yo. It looks good. It objectively looks good. But it doesn't seem like the most inspired choice for the art direction. All sort of blending together in the footage, which, unlike Eternal, immediately had those recognizable elements straight off the bat. I look at stuff like the cutscenes and I don't know, man, it looks a lot like Diablo. It also kind of looks like the new God of War games too. I mean, speaking of God of War, I saw this shot in particular and it looked a lot like Athens from God of War 1. I like the idea of a Doom game based more on a power metal vibe, but if I was in charge of the art direction, I would have had the color choices harken back to the metal albums that provoke that same feeling. Or even embellish it with more of the Berserk influence that 2016 was kind of going for. Or just say fuck it and go full Iron Maiden. Or make it look more gothic or ethereal or something, man. I don't know, it looks like this. I feel like I'm bracing myself for a very self-serious, phoned-in Brotherhood of Arms type of story when I'm looking at the characters. People like to criticize 2016's art direction by saying it's too red, and it has a lot of red, but it's also a very colorful game. If you actually look at what that game was doing with its set dressing, and its colors, and its lighting, it's an artistic masterpiece. It's got a smaller color palette compared to Eternal, but there's nothing wrong with its own color palette and what it's doing. It's a style of its own. It was set in those two locations, and it really thoroughly explored those locations through its artwork. They have character, and every mechanic was contextualized to reinforce that setting. It was all about the UAC and Hell, and I do believe it was a successful exploration of that setting. And it seems ignorant for people to say the levels all look the same when they really don't. You know what game also had levels that all look the same? The original Doom. And Quake. And Quake 2. And I understand that Dark Ages also has a style of its own, but it doesn't seem to be reaching the heights of what Eternal and 2016 did. And I know this is just an artistic disagreement, a style that doesn't appeal to me, but it did do the Constant Brown game before, and I liked how it looked better there. I just feel like we're kind of running out of things to say with Doom. Like, I've seen it before. I just feel jaded. I don't know, man. I'm still not confident in this game's existence. However, there's still potential that the game will have locations and environments that will assuredly blow me away. Prove me wrong. Please. I was also hoping that the game would tone down the more overtly gamey looking elements from Eternal, but they seem to be actually doubling down on them, and I don't know how I feel about that, especially when they go for a more grounded and muted art style. I can imagine seeing this over and over again as kind of obnoxious on the eyes. Now, I do understand why Eternal did this. I was never against the game being more colorful. I love Eternal's core art direction. I supported the change. In fact, if I was in charge of 2016 and Eternal's art direction, I would have had the games more resemble their concept art, an illustrative look focused more on color and shape and harsh shadow work, and having textures be a bit more flat and painterly, instead of adding a whole bunch of realistic texture work to the models and environments. It's a faster paced game, the art needs to change with it. And 2016's art is not perfect, some of it is kinda dull looking, but some of the decisions made in Doom Eternal kind of ended up harming the art. And I don't just mean the visual art, I mean it as art, the art of the game design and the storytelling. The game put a larger emphasis on its story and cutscenes, and wanted the players to be invested in its world building and its narrative, but the game world was littered with super garish, gamey elements like floating weapons and cartoon effects and graphics that highlighted the game's artificiality, creating a large disconnect between the game world and the story that they wanted to put greater emphasis on, the game trying to have its cake and eat it too. I know that they wanted to make the game look arcadey to sort of harken back to that era, but Doom was never arcadey, and I majorly disagree with anyone who calls Doom arcadey solely because it was old and simple. It was shareware. Its first episode was released for free. It wasn't a game about constantly starting from scratch. Your performance in the previous level would carry over to the next. It was the opposite of arcadey. The graphics were cartoony, but not like this. There weren't obnoxious blips and bloops and arrows and blah 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 telling you what to do and where to go like an arcade shooter. It actually contextualized a lot of its stuff pretty well, like picking up a shotgun off a dead body, just like in 2016. Where in any of these games did we have big floating green spinning weapons and cartoon question blocks? I know this isn't a huge deal, and if you don't really care for art design in games, this probably seems like nothing to you, but I like when games contextualize their mechanics in illustrative and narrative ways. It's memorable. It breeds more ideas. Also, this is just another tangent, get used to them, but holy hell, the Doom 2016 multiplayer maps are fucking gorgeous. Holy shit, where the fuck was any of this in any of the main games? This shit looks fucking stellar. Please incorporate this into more of the main games. I want a Doom game that looks like this. Please, id Software. This shit rocks my cock off. It's fantastic. This game obviously has the talent and manpower behind it, and I really want to like how it looks, but I still can't help but feel like a lot of it looks kind of bland and very noisy with its UI. Nothing about the weapon or enemy designs have really stuck with me, you know? You show me a shield that's also a chainsaw. It's cool. A mace, a gun that shoots crushed skulls as ammunition. It's fine. You show me a super shotgun with a grappling hook? Hey now. I look at the promotional material and I just go, eh. I mean, like, the box art. It's objectively good artwork, but like, what am I supposed to feel other than, yep, another Doom game? I mean, they have an alternate version that looks way better. Use that. I don't know what it is about the new Doom games having fantastic alternate artwork, and they just choose the lesser option as the final poster. Even the name doesn't fill me with much confidence. Doom the Dark Ages. Doom the Dark Ages? Really? That's what we stuck with? Doom the Dark Ages, that's our title? It's like if they called Doom Eternal Doom Hell Awakens or some shit like that. The leaked codename of Year Zero sounded way better. Maybe they were trying to avoid a lawsuit with DC? I don't know. Doomguy's always been more of a Marvel guy anyway, and none of the music I've heard so far is doing anything for me at all. It all feels very apathetic. It sounds like those YouTube videos that are like, creating blank track in Mick Gordon style, and it sounds nothing like Mick Gordon at all. That's what the soundtrack just sounds like so far. Just incredibly overproduced. Shame they burned that bridge by being pieces of shit, but hey, I'm glad Mick came forward. And you can't really replace an artist with a service. I'm being bitchy, I know. Whatever. Actually, it's my channel, I'm allowed to bitch, fuck you. It feels somewhat milquetoast, and doesn't fill me with excitement for what Doom is capable of, or that this is a confident step forward for id. Because I look at this game, and think that their time and talent could be spent on a different or new IP. What are you freaking talking about? This game has a big dragon and a mech you can pilot. Are you saying this game looks bland? What are you talking about, you freaking hater? I'm keeping an open mind, and once again I have to say that everything I say here is of course subject to massive change come May. I would love to be proven so wrong. What I would especially love to be proven wrong on is my apprehension about this game's story. Because goddamn, Doom Eternal's story was a little messy, putting it lightly.
Dr. Hayden is the Seraphim. He's been with us the entire time.
And the worst part is that I actually liked Doom Eternal's story, and had a lot of faith in it before the game came out. And I know people are gonna dismiss my apprehension by saying, who cares if the story sucks? It's a Doom game. If the gameplay is good, who cares if the story sucks? These things have no impact on one another and are made in completely separate vacuums in different dimensions of space and time. The trajectory of one does not have any impact on the development and time spent on one another. So who fucking cares? We all know the famous John Carmack quote, story in a game is like story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. Yeah, well guess what? 5 years later, Valve released Half-Life and said, fuck you, John Carmack, you fucking nerd. You were wrong. The expectation that story doesn't matter in a Doom game, I believe, comes from a few different things. Number one, the previously mentioned Carmack quote and the company's troubled history when it comes to storytelling. Number two, the false belief that gameplay and narrative are just completely separate and that one being bad doesn't impact the other, even though both aspects share development time and resources, and a good story requires an equilibrium between the two. And number three, people just don't care. And that's fine for a game that isn't concerned about story, but in 2016 and especially Eternal, they wanted you to care. If they didn't, they wouldn't devote several gameplay mechanics, cutscenes, environments, and a whole ass level dedicated to the story. If it truly didn't matter, Eternal in 2016 would have have just been an abstract series of hallways and labs and demonic imagery like in the original games. But even then, the precedent of them wanting to do more, to create a setting that exists to back up the gameplay, was already there. Doom already had a lot of tiny narrative and contextual elements littered throughout the game that weren't just the cheesy text scrolls between episodes. There's no commandment saying you can't put story in a Doom game. You know, that's just some fake rule some dumb millennials made up. The game's core visual is the lone marine battling against the forces of hell. It's a powerful image, there's a story to tell there. And in Doom 2016, I think they really had something going. Especially the codex entries, which seem antithetical to the fast-paced nature of a Doom game, but felt like a really natural evolution of what they were trying to do in Doom 3. And it kind of felt like a slap in the face in Eternal, when the game asks you to get really into the game's codex entries, up until the last DLC where they're like, the codex lied the entire time, have fun trying to put the pieces together, which really did feel like a retcon that they don't want to own up to. But seeing that they've explicitly stated that they're wanting to move most of the storytelling out of the codex and onto the screen, does show that they've really taken this criticism to heart. Given a lot of really neat conceptual work that would have added so much character to the world they supposedly wanted to expand, never made it in. Areas that looked amazing in the artwork came out looking pretty dull in the final product. And you can really tell that in the DLCs, graphically speaking, it's a step below both 2016 and Eternal. The final boss is a complete fumble from both a storytelling and gameplay standpoint, if you ask me. I understand that both of these DLCs were made in under a year, while employees worked from home under quarantine, but I don't like the fact that, because they had to work under such a strict time limit to meet Bethesda's stupid season pass, and other things that were a waste of time, it hurt the quality of the games and the story they wanted to tell, and I'm not holding any of that against them. But it doesn't take away from the poor decisions both games made when it came to their storytelling and their presentation. And in some respects, the main crux of my hesitation towards the game's story, a bit of a misrepresentation of their main character. I'm not the only one who feels like Doom is kind of becoming played out at this point. There's a pretty derogatory line of criticism, mainly towards Eternal, that the new Doom games, tonally speaking, are kind of juvenile and embarrassing, or in layman's terms, soy. As I've kind of hinted at, I don't think that reputation is entirely undeserved. I think this game's style and music and presentation certainly isn't helping, although there are large segments of that criticism that are either too harsh or just plain ignorant. And this is kind of hard to wrestle with, given that metal, as a genre, has always been viewed kind of as a punchline. And when they lean into that cheese, if done correctly, can turn out pretty well. If done badly, can be a little cringe. Doom is pretty analogous to metal as a genre, reinterpreted and expanded on in so many ways, so to get mad at the new Doom games for being heightened and theatrical, when they're inspired by a music genre that is famously heightened and full of theatrics, is just kind of absurd and reactionary. And to say things like, this doesn't look like Doom, is a pretty hollow argument, when the series and the genre it pulls from have endlessly reinterpreted themselves over and over, and will continue to do so. So my mixed feelings towards the Dark Ages isn't that I think it's bad because it's different, it's just that I don't think it looks that good. Make it different, but the quality of what you do differently is subject to scrutiny. But if the game exists, as Hugo put it, as a continuation of their Doom universe, I don't understand what purpose this game serves as part of a larger narrative. I'm more of a fan of stories that are about the why rather than the how, and I don't think we needed an entire prequel game to explain what's been going on, given that both 2016 and Eternal's narrative gave enough context for what was happening during the Night Sentinel era, without us having to actually see what happened, and in a lot of ways, not seeing what happened is better storytelling. I'm not a fan of movies or games or really anything that takes the part of an existing narrative that was only meant for small bits of world building and to fuel the narrative, and then explain said things literally, especially when the answers given are not very good. I know I'm not the only one who thinks the Night Sentinel stuff is the least interesting aspect of the new game story, and the Sentinel levels in Eternal rank as some of my least favorite in the game. I think the Sentinels were done a little bit better in 2016, since they were more relegated to background elements, and were mainly used to set up the grandiose mystique of the Doomslayer's character, but having every part of their culture and blah 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 explained through codex and just kind of Skyrim looking levels really makes the Sentinel stuff just come off as kinda lame, when they worked so much better in 2016 as the forgotten civilization Doomguy fought with that's now lost to hell. And I don't really understand what we're doing with Doomguy as a character other than just repeating that he is really badass and strong. And I think we're starting to lose a little bit of what made this character initially appealing. The hook to 2016's story is that it was set at a very specific point in this character's history, and a very specific point in this company's history. The game was mostly a return to form, after both the series and id Software themselves had moved away from the high-octane, action-oriented moody shooters that they were known for, and the backlash against Doom 3 and Rage only further created this feeling of distance. So to have the story start at that specific time and place, and having this period of absence be reflected in this character's entrapment and return, was pretty genius. Where was the Doomguy in the id Software we all knew and loved? Well, he was just locked away in hell after kicking so much demon ass. It's meta, it's satirical, funny, and in the moments it needs to be, oddly melancholy and frightening. And what was so great about this Doomslayer, although a silent protagonist who we never got a good glimpse of, was that he oozed character just from his animations alone. We don't know anything about him. At the time, we didn't even know if he was the same guy from the originals, but it's obvious from the start that he is just a guy. Blessed with extraordinary powers or not, he is ultimately just a guy, in spite of all of this. The joke of his existence is about how the demons talk about him in legend. They mythicize him in stories. He's the boogeyman of demon culture, blessed by an angel in order to deliver his wrath unto all of hell. But he's just a guy, in a spacesuit. And no matter where he is, he distinctly stands out amongst everything else for just being a guy. But it feels like the developers, kind of in Eternal, and especially so far in this game, fell for the mythos that was created around the guy. I love his design in Eternal, but I liked it because it felt like a natural extension of where the gameplay and story was headed in Eternal from 2016. It created a very natural evolution. Not really with the new game, and I don't think anything new or substantive about Doomguy's character is really being discussed here. And the suit feels, I don't know, a little overdesigned? Like we've forgotten about the design's original core appeal. The lone marine against the forces of hell. This is the guy that punched his commanding officer when ordered to fire on civilians. That ended up getting him sent to the Phobos base where the first game takes place. I don't think this is the type of guy who would allow himself or would even like to be adorned with a gaudy fur cape and fancy knight armor. It takes away from his humanity and deifies him to a degree that doesn't make for much of an interesting character, and doesn't fit with the character that is displayed in the game that this is supposed to be a prequel to. All we knew about this guy in 2016 was that he was a lone space marine who got caught up with the space fantasy medieval guild of demon hunters. That was also part of the joke. It was a funny juxtaposition. He looked like a fish out of water. But to then have this guy presented like this, I think is going way too far, and doesn't really fit with 2016's implications, and takes away from the human I don't give a fuck element that made him charming in 2016 and Eternal. But I guess what happens with this character in the story remains to be seen. Maybe the final reason this game doesn't fill me with much confidence is that this is an id Software game. And I know that sounds stupid, but this id Software is not this id Software. And what we now know about this id Software, I don't really care to put much love or faith into this company, despite the quality of the previous two Doom entries. Modern id has been like coasting off what their founders did instead of taking a lot of pride in what they're doing now. And I get it, they stand on the shoulders of giants, but it's like every dev trailer they're talking about their legacy and the old Dooms, and it's like, I don't care about what they did back then, I want to hear about now. Granted, my apprehension does manifest because they've made some real stinkers. Quake Champions, pretty bland. Rage 2, oof. That one was embarrassing. And don't you love the fact that we're now forced to use ray tracing and de novo? Don't you love Bethesda? You will buy Doom Dark Ages pre-order. You will buy our toys or products or you are not a real fan. And seeing how certain bad actors are still being shown in the spotlight shows me that the people in charge have fully succumbed to whatever dark corporate culture Bethesda had wanted them to be for so long. I really respect Hugo Martin. I think he is an amazing, passionate game director and creative, who is responsible for creating two of my favorite games of all time. But I don't like how people are clearly falling for what Bethesda is doing here, trying to save the reputation of Marty and other unnamed higher-ups at id Software who abused and mistreated Mick Gordon during his time on Doom Eternal by putting out these positive-looking videos of Hugo where he epically destroys the Doom haters and other childish phrases said by people. And those same people are lapping it up like everything's back to normal and nothing happened. Because people need to personally feel as if the developers are their friends. Hey guys, quit hating on Doom Eternal, but also, please be nice to id Software and Doom the Dark Ages. They're just an innocent company who did nothing wrong. But please understand what I am saying. I am saying, despite all of this, id Software were able to release two of the best shooters in the past 15 years. The people who make the game, in spite of all of the corporate crap, know how to make a good fucking game. Better than most on the market. I mean, I don't even really care for the boomer shooter resurgence or whatever you want to call it. I think most of them are kind of derivative and Nostalgia pandering? Oh my god, did I just shit talk Dusk on a video about boomer shooters? Oh no! I mean, the game is fine, but I do not care for Gen X nostalgia pandering. I do not care. I do not care. And that's not what these games are. They're old school game design pushed forward. They're just as popular with the gamers back then as they are with the gamers now. I hope I've come off as coherent in this video. I have so much to say about the series, and I don't want this video to be any longer or more unfocused as it already kind of is. And don't take my criticism of Eternal as damnation towards that game, because that's not what I'm doing. Or that I think 2016 is better or perfect, because I don't. I'm critical of Eternal, but because I love it. And when I see things that I don't like, or that I know it could do better, well, gosh dang it, I get passionate, you know? And I want to steer it in the right direction. And I will defend that game till I'm blue in the face and gets many of the bad faith criticisms steered towards its way. But whenever you so much as insinuate that Doom 2016 may have done something or maybe some things better than Doom Eternal, people take that as you saying that you think Eternal sucks. And if you go so far as to say you even like 2016 more than Eternal, well, you just upset the Doom Eternal YouTube Defense Squad. How dare you have a different opinion? Don't you know that Doom Eternal is this divine gift from God, and if you say anything slightly critical about it, you're basically murdering me, my family, my country, my history, and my bloodline? I'm not saying that's what I think. It's not. I like Eternal more. I do think it's the better game, but god damn, no one can be normal about this fucking game. A certain part of the Doom Eternal YouTube community feels like they need to jump to the game's defense like they're about to watch a loved one get shot. How brave, guys. Thank you for defending the corporation, you mindless fucking drones. It's like so many fans of the modern Doom games have taken the position of, yeah, we're toxic and annoying, but we're proud of it, and we're badasses who shouldn't be fucked with. And people are so quick to defend anything that's Doom because they're afraid of criticism towards their favorite brand, as if that'll directly harm sales or something. And even if it did, who cares? I wouldn't particularly be losing sleep if the bigwigs at ZeniMax and Bethesda didn't get to fill their pockets full of cash for another week. When Mick Gordon said,
"Now Doom fans, they're not like Disney fans. If Doom fans don't like what you've done, they'll burn your house down."
that wasn't like a call to action. That wasn't something to be inspired by. I was kind of happy when the Doom community just died for a second. It was like we had peace on Earth. And now it's back to hell on earth with clickbaity Doom YouTube content, like Jesus, man. And it doesn't help that the people criticizing the games have a severe case of Doom Eternal derangement syndrome. Like they have a personal vendetta against the game and anyone who liked it. And any criticisms that I may have get swept under the same rug as the people who think Doom Eternal killed their family. Neither the people who love or hate the game can seem to be normal about it. Doom Eternal really was just a massive filter, wasn't it? Like on a cataclysmic scale. The way that game makes people seethe, even to this day, is unlike anything I have ever seen with a game. And it's so clearly from the fact that they just sucked. There's no like underlying answer, they just sucked at the game. I've never seen a person who didn't like Eternal or hated the game that was good at it, or even beat the game. And if they did, they weren't just barreling through it learning nothing. I understand not liking Eternal or not having it be to your taste. That doesn't bother me. But you gotta be out of your fucking mind if you think that game is bad or they phoned it in. Especially in the DLC where they kind of did. And that's not what I believe is going on here. And I don't want anyone to go into this game with a negative mindset or expectation because of what I have to say. Go in apprehensive, go in educated, and with an open mind, but don't go in trying to expect the worst and amplify the bad things to a comical degree. There's a lot of things that I really do like. You know, I saw this big chungus right here and I was like, okay, this could be pretty good. The gameplay showcase actually got an audible laugh out of me when I saw the medieval keycard. I'm like, okay, that's pretty clever. Doom is such a malleable series that's so open to constant reinterpretation. Even since the beginning, the mapping tools were open source, allowing the community to do whatever the fuck they want. Playing the original Doom games is not giving you the full experience of what these games are capable of. And the whole "this doesn't look like Doom" thing has existed since the beginning, and it will continue. They said it about Doom 64, they said it about Doom 3, they said it about 2016, and they said it about Eternal. And they'll keep saying it here. And my criticisms, by the way, weren't that this isn't Doom, it was more out of concern for its production. Its software's changing culture, production under Bethesda, ZeniMax, and Microsoft, and how it'll justify its existence as a good Doom game. Everyone says, Doom Eternal sucks, and Doom Eternal is the best game ever, but me? I just want to rip and tear, for God's sake. I know some people are going to get mad and call me a complainer because I'm not audibly hyping up and gushing over this new game that isn't even out yet. And to be fair, I did make a 40-minute video about a game that isn't out yet. But if that's your mindset, then sorry. But just because you have a big shiny new game with the name Doom on it, doesn't mean I'm obligated to like it or to keep my mouth shut if I don't have positive things to say about it. I have no loyalty to Doom, or id Software, or Hugo, or any brand. I don't care about fandom, or fan bases, or loyalty to a game studio, or a series, or a online community, and neither should you. I think you should play the game when it comes out, and if you like it, then you like it. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. And if you want to keep the discussion going about the game after it comes out, then you can do that. But understand where your priorities should lie. You should not devote yourself to a game or a brand. There's a difference between having respect and being a fool. That being said, as negative as I may have come across, I am still very excited to play Doom: The Dark Ages. I think it's like the only AAA game that I actually care about right now, and the follow-up video that I will eventually make will give me more room than this video allowed me to have, to properly express my views on the series. I want good games. I want id Software to make good games. But I want those games to prove themselves as art, and not as products to appease shareholders and bank off a brand's name. Doom isn't a guaranteed success. A game titled Doom doesn't mean it will be good. Be excited, be hesitant, be all of these things, but don't keep your expectations, whether they be positive or negative, as a sacred oath. And that's really all I have to say right now. Well, actually, there's a lot more that I did have to say, but I just cut most of it from the script to keep this video as tight as possible, only talking about the major things. I hope I came off as comprehensive, cohesive, and cool. Consider this video something to chew on until I make the TF2 comic video. And then after the TF2 comic video, I will be making the long teased and long pushed back platformer video. If you like Doom, and you like shooters, and you like Bethesda games, I think you should stick around. Doom is a series I want to revisit more. I have a video that I want to make about Fallout eventually. I'd like to make a Doom 3 video at some point, even a Quake video at some point. And then of course the follow-up video, which will be much longer than this one once the game finally comes out, and once I make the follow-up video. I don't know when that will come out, not too far in the future, but I have other things on my timeline right now, and so please be patient. Okay? You can wait, Mark, okay? You can wait. I want to digest the game a little bit once I actually have it and can play it as much as I want. That's it for this video. Will Doom: The Dark Ages be good? Will it be bad? Will it be cringe? Will it go hard? I don't know. Prove me wrong, Doom: The Dark Ages. But the most important question of all, what will the Mayo Man think of it? Good night.